So, welcome everybody. The People's Emergency Briefing film that has come out of the National Emergency Briefing that was put together in November last year. And I had a question from somebody the other day saying, who was behind it all? Was it just the two brothers putting it together or not? And I didn't know what the answer was to that. But it seems that it's very timely, and it's very something that is getting a lot of traction lately. Those people who have seen the film, those people who have shown the film, have not reported any negative feedback about it at all. And to my mind, it's quite well balanced. When we started to hear about the film from the Great Collaboration, we thought, yes, their ambition was to badger government, get some of this information televised. Yes, they wanted to have local screenings that engaged local MPs, but I thought we also needed to use it as a springboard for more local action. Because there's some people who are thinking, well, there's all these concerns we have, crises, what else can we do about it? And so we've been putting together some information about that, some of the guides about that. And the people that have been producing the films, Simon and Nick Aldrich, have responded saying thank you, and they appreciate that what we've done was useful. So here we go. So a lot of people, of course, are already facing things that they've not faced before as a result of the climate crisis, as it's being called. There's some flooding in Ottery St Mary in Devon. And that is not a river overflowing. That is simply water coming down that hasn't got enough space to get away. And there's a police lady there up to her knees in it. And there are lots of places around the country are experiencing these and other effects. Also, effects of heat waves and other things as well, but certainly flooding. So there will be a lot of people who will already be interested and prepared in getting some of these messages together. And of course, in a lot of places, people are already working on local action, very much so, and what they're doing in response to the world that is changing around us. So resilience, local resilience, is quite a long-winded definition from government, but things about harnessing local resources and expertise is what it seems to be about. With what I call what we do is about helping people to help themselves. The villain of the piece, as I've said in other occasions, is a chap called William the Conqueror. Ever since 1066, we've been told off to do as we're told, and the powers that be will sort everything out. Thank you very much. That's no longer viable because the powers that be don't have the resources that William the Conqueror enjoyed in 1066. And so we do have to actually be doing more of it ourselves. And that's part of the message. So how do we get people to embrace that message and to do things rather than saying it's somebody else's job and why aren't they doing it? So the presentation I'm giving will be available in PDF after this event on our knowledge base. And you see there's a link there which will take you through to the briefing, which shows the film of the November presentations, which was quite intense. But just to see an idea of the sort of things that were said then, there are 9 or 10 different topics there. In our nation, we've lost 53% of our biodiversity. A lot of this won't be news to people who are listening, but these are the kind of messages that are coming across from the People's Emergency Briefing film as well. We keep burning fossil fuels, temperatures will keep rising. I think we understand that. UK getting wetter in winter faster than models predicted. Well, we've had a pretty wet winter. I can't remember a January before when it was actually raining every day where I live in the Forest of Dean. We're hearing a bit about AMOC, this ocean current. We used to call it the Gulf Stream. We're kept a mild climate, even though we're further north than parts of Canada, because of the ocean currents. And if we get a lot of the Arctic ice melting, then the conditions that encourage that Gulf Stream will change, and we will suddenly be becoming much more of a continental climate. Still heat waves in the summer, colder in the winter, and frankly less food growing days. So I was given that by a PhD presentation last year. We already import nearly half of our food, many of it from places which are already suffering from climate change. We had some shortages of salad crops last summer because of heat waves in Spain and Morocco. So this is something that's also been very much highlighted by a national intelligence briefing, which the government hadn't shared with the rest of the world, which was actually dug out of them by the media on a Freedom of Information Act. So there are issues around that. The health presentation in November, the real code is the breakdown of our systems, of our National Health Service can't cope, and then it won't be a question of whether we've got heart problems, other kind of physical concerns, cancer problems. The fact that the system actually can't cope with whatever it is we've got is the concern that was expressed. Again, we had somebody talking about national security. If things get really bad, then how do we actually manage things at the very local level? We've already seen young people mass shoplifting occasions, encountering people and getting through to each other on their mobile phones and then breaking out like that. I mean, that's mild compared to what might be happening if we don't have enough food to feed our families. Where do we go in those situations? Clinging to the status quo. Yes, I'm trying to solve 21st century problems with 20th century solutions is not something that I can see is going to be a good idea. What is it that we are going to be doing? We're in a new world. We're getting to be a new world. We get people saying, "Oh, let's replace our high streets." The high streets are going, but I mean, we can't actually turn the clock back to that. We have to be thinking forward about what's going to work. Energy transition. We've heard a lot about that in these sort of discussions. Interesting. Half of UK recessions have been triggered by fossil fuel price volatility. What have we got at the moment? Fossil fuel price volatility. Was it something like the United Arab Emirates are leaving OPEC? It was OPEC that started things going in the 70s. I remember my father and his brothers driving miles trying to find petrol at a penny less per gallon. Heavens, those days. Okay, so I don't know how many of us have actually seen the film yet. I've seen it. I know Graham has seen it. I thought I'd just show the trailer for it before we go any further forward. Here we go.
Top scientists say the environmental crisis needs a response similar to the scale of the Second World War.
We are in the thick of a crisis. We all have to act.
It's getting worse fast, and we're not prepared.
I'm scared for my own life and future, and I'm absolutely terrified for that of my son.
We're facing the potential of an ungovernable state.
It could make our country uninhabitable.
Oh my goodness.
The physics don't care about the politics.
You're being taken for a fool, my friend.
There are plenty of solutions out there. Solutions that will make life better. The burning question is, what can we do to make them happen?
It's absolutely bonkers. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Okay. Right, where are we? Thank you, Jennifer Saunders. That was the reason for the PG label. But of course, language, Timothy, but the language actually reaches some people. How are the screen? These are two images from that People's Emergency Briefing website showing where the screenings are happening, already booked. Those two pictures are 3 weeks apart. The one on the right was yesterday. The one on the left was only 3 weeks ago. So as we can see, the message is getting out there. This film is getting much more widely shown, not uniformly in every case. There's some places here which it's not being shown very much yet. And we could talk about when we chat about those of us that are already doing that and those of us that are already been to see it. But that is something that it is happening. It is spreading. So what we're talking about is what's the next steps. There's lots of guidance from the film producers about how to manage a filming and how to organize the event, and that's their facilitation guide. What we've done from the Great Collaboration is looked at how do we then actually help people to think about that in terms of managing the local response. A lot of the focus from the producers has been about buttonholing MPs, getting messages through to government, which is absolutely their main objective. our focus has been very much on things happening locally. We have got there a guide to various stages in doing this, and which we published on our knowledge base. If I click onto that, we'll probably get to it. Here we go. And there is all these stages there showing us how we can do it. There's lots of things about it. I won't labour this part of it, but in terms about local action, yes, leadership is vital. We can probably all understand that it only takes one person, determined person, to start something going, and then they can get people to work up behind them. So there's lots of stuff there, some of which is it's just dovetailed with the advice from the producers. But you know, one of the things they do say is you're going to have a filming, plan the next meeting in advance. There's always a follow-up meeting that you can talk about. Certainly there'll be some more campaigning going on, organising, and what happens thereafter. So we've got some guidance there about it. We've also got some actions that people might consider locally as well. So we've got some sorts of advice there, which people can look at. So that's the link is there, and I can put that link in the chat as well in a short while, as well as having it from the screening. You'll see on the left the Climate Emergency Centre Network have also been thinking about that, and you can see that they've got some thoughts there about it as well. When we're doing these screenings, of course, some people will already be engaged, but some people have never faced or considered all these things at all. So again, language, Timothy, what are the words that we use for different? There's no one message or one set of words is going to meet everybody's requirements. So we have to think about what we're saying. And of course, if we're having a meeting and discussion after a film screening, of course, we will get different views and different people coming forward. So actually managing those discussions and helping everybody to have their say is another skill that we understand in terms of enabling those conversations. But also we're saying that everybody needs to know what they might do next. To say, all right, buttonhole your MP and then go home and then we'll be fine, well, we can't say that. There have to be some other things that people can consider. If there's a meeting and a process that comes out of these filmings, then that's brilliant. So in terms of what we offer, yeah, we've got some advice for screeners, which I've shown. This is a picture here of a community climate action workshop being run by my friend Jules Thompson from Community Climate Action UK. So this is what a meeting can look like following a screening. Get local leaders along, because if there are people already leading things in our parish, in our neighbourhood, in our town, there are people that are already used to in managing things. Well, they say, if you want something done, go to a busy person. Let's get those people along to our screening as well. We're not necessarily expecting them all to get involved in this as well, but they are the people who are already used to being leaders, and they can perhaps be the right people to be talking about some of the next steps. Have a follow-up meeting. Yes, there's a facilitation guide from the film producers about how to managing things on the day. We do need to, if people are going to keep coming forward again, let's find some way of actually knowing that we can keep in contact with them. Let's get their contact details on the day, and to prepare for the follow-up and subsequent meetings. And the guidance that I just showed you briefly is very much all about how that might be managed. So those are the kind of things that we can do in addition to the advice and guidance from the film producers. And as I've said, shown you, we have got a link through that, and that's published on our knowledge base. So we're getting to this question of discussion about what we want to talk about. Is it enough to give people pathways to action? This is something very much the Great Collaboration has been setting out to do, things that we can do, providing advice and guidance, encouraging people to work together. Is there an occasion coming soon about being a bit more directive? Is that the right word? I don't know. Is it sticking carrots? That's an unfortunate use of phrase, perhaps. But I'm just wondering aloud as to where we go from here in terms of, we can show stuff that we're doing, we can share stuff that people are doing, but is there more urgency than that's requiring a different approach? And that's very much an open question from myself. Here's one example of something we've had a good banter session last week about food resilience from the Shropshire Good Food Partnership. Yes, we import half our food. There's a link there to the food security intelligence briefing that the government hadn't publicised until they were nudged to do it. We hear about the US war in Iran. We don't know how long that will continue, but it's already affecting supplies in different ways. We don't make our own nitrate fertilizer in this country anymore. If we're going to put fertilizer nitrates on our farmers' fields, we import it. And it seems that the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz is part of preventing that happening. There was a farmer on the BBC the other day. He's in Kent, and he was saying, well, he doesn't know what he's going to be doing this autumn, because if he doesn't have the fertilizer put on his fields, he might not plough his fields at all. And he said, if all the farmers in the country actually let their fields lie fallow this autumn, then we are going to be in a bit of difficulty. So that's something there. Again, how do we say these things to people without actually scaring them silly, getting them to do panic buying? But have been empty shelves. There will be some more empty shelves. For immediate shortages, yes, food banks, community larders, community fridges, very good things to do for their own own value. And then what about longer term stuff? What about what land is there? Can we grow more produce, grow more things in our area? What about a food partnership where you work together with different sectors to plan something for our immediate area in terms of how we can be more resilient in terms of food supply? And there's a link there to there's 123 of those around the country already. We might need some more. We will see more. Community supported agriculture, people working with their farmers, they're helping out on the fields in return for a share of the produce. That's a very broad summary of what's happening. What I'm saying to people now is that things like food resilience in terms of town and parish councils and community councils in Wales isn't something that comes up very regularly. It's not something that's necessarily on those local councils' radars, but in terms of the public affairs, which we're supposed to be concerned about as local councils, in terms of responding to local people, it doesn't mean to say we have to do it all, but I mean, in terms of finding solutions to some of these things and having that, at least that having that discussion, having an item on our local council agenda so that we can review that and consider what might be happening in our parish, not necessarily by ourselves. Parish clerks very busy, as I know, as a clerk for 8 years. Councillors have other commitments as well, work commitments. But if this is going to come at us, and if we're going to see these supermarket shelves, I mean, this year, which is the concern that we were given from Shropshire last week, then we need to start thinking about it sooner rather than later. Lots of different ways of approaching it, but let's think about what works best in our area, because every place is different, every geography is different, every community is different. See what can be done. So that's just one example of something that will come forward from this sort of filming and the crisis that's approaching us. We've done our own film, hurrah! In terms of some of the things we've been talking about, is what else we might be doing. We've got our own 10-minute film, which I can show you if you would like to see that, which says, look around our area, find out and get in touch with local people, what's happening locally, what else might be doing, say that we're doing something, because particularly, again, if we're a local council, simply saying that we don't have to declare an emergency, but say we're going to be doing stuff, it's going to help people understand that so they can come forward. And certainly people involved in the transition movement have been doing this kind of thing for some while. Start with something simple. Certainly in terms of local councils looking at the planning applications there's all kinds of things coming forward now. There's been some new guidance coming in about neighbourhood plans, by the way, which we've just heard about. Things are trickling through from legislation that was passed in 2023. And they were saying, well, we've got to be more aware of adaptation and things to do with climate responses when we're looking at neighbourhood plans. Then it takes away the other hand and says, well, don't put in anything that's going to prevent people building more houses. And, you can't be saying there's going to be less houses here and all the rest of it. So present government's still very keen to build houses, and they don't seem to mind whether it's on greenfield agricultural land or not. That's my bugbear with it. Work with other people. We can't do it all. It's got to be a community response. If the community is going to have food security issues around resilience, there's got to be a collective response. It's not something that an individual or a household can do. and let's share some good practice with other people. So I can show that film in a bit, but I'm conscious that we may want to have a discussion before we do that. So how do we get out there? How do we get more people engaged? What are the messages we use? I've suggested keep calm and work differently. We can offer practical support around the country, as our colleagues in Community Climate Action UK are offering workshops. The Climate Psychology Alliance, who have given several talks with us here, are looking at very much more the people skills side of this experience, that we're also enjoying experiencing. Prepare to meet the demand. If we're going to get more people as a result of the film saying, let's do stuff, let's get involved in these things, let's see can we meet that demand? How can we do that? That may be something certainly for the Great Collaboration, potentially for the Transition Network, and for all of us in local councils. We're talking about a train the trainer program. More people need to be going out and helping people organize things locally, helping them look at what they're doing, what they might be doing. So we're talking about that a lot. Influencing them. Graham and I were talking about this only this morning. What's the best use of our time? None of us can do all of it. Do some of us need to spend some more time actually speaking to other bodies and other organizations and other sources in order to get more traction, in order to get more support around the country? It's on my list. I need to speak to the county officers for county associations of local parish and town councils. I've spoken to many of them. I haven't spoken to all of them. So that's something I can be doing. Is there anything else? What else can we be doing as individuals, as part of our organizations within our neighborhoods, in order to spread the word, but also to support further action? So I'm going to stop sharing there. I can show the 10-minute film at some point if we like, but I thought that now was a good time to pause. It's just nearly 12:30 to think about any responses to the film, any responses to what we do after the film, and any thoughts about how we progress from here as concerned individuals. Alastair, good to see you again.
Hi.
How many of us?
Personally, you say you want to avoid getting people overexcited.
Yeah.
It's only something like that wakes them up.
Yes.
Down with us, suddenly we land up with quite a number of parishes in Sussex and West Kent that land up with no water for about a fortnight.
Yeah.
And what you turn on the tap and you expect, you go into a supermarket and there it is on the shelf. And I've said to people sometime, look behind the front row. How much is in there? There's nothing.
Right.
It's all just in time.
Yeah.
This is why some of my colleagues get over enthusiastic and block some of the hubs for the supermarkets. It very soon jiggers things up. Right. And I think the water is the biggest priority, and the food. It's the 5 elements of life, isn't it? Food, water, yes. Water, food, and lands up with shelter. But
shelter.
It's people don't do it. When we had our Kent Association of Local Councils have a meeting every 4 weeks. Oh no, every two months. 2 months now, in Ashford, which takes the 26 parish councils. Now, the number that turn up, I actually asked them the other day, how many have got a resilience plan? And we were the only ones with one.
Right.
And I've got a chap who's very, very hot on resilience and dealt with drug chemical spillages and goodness knows what in his job for the last 40 years. He's very good. He set up this plan, but you've got to get people to work it.
Yeah.
And I've had meetings in the village hall and end up about 5 people.
Yeah.
But if there's something that really winds them up, they all turn up.
Yeah. I think that's right. And we all know that if we get a parish meeting, if there's a local issue, then people arrive mob-handed, and that's right. So yes, we do want to stir people up, but we want to stir the people up so that they do stuff. And that's the gap to bridge, isn't it? We get their attention.
Parish council, that's their job, don't they? And that's the trouble.
Yeah. Well, if the parish council needs to be doing it, some parish chairmen still think climate change is a con.
Oh yeah. Look outside the door.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, there are some individuals like that still around. So I'm work 5 hours a week for the Society of Local Council Clerks. That's very much on my agenda, is to try and how do I boost take up, how do I boost concerns and action at parish and town council level. When I give talks, we've got 3 regional seminars coming up this year that I'll be speaking at. I'll be able to be much more in people's face when I'm in person than actually, things that I write and put in the newsletters and so forth. I mean, every fortnight we send out some message, and we've got a new website coming from that. But that is the issue, isn't it? How do we get more people to not say it's somebody else's problem, not say la la la, but to find ways of being more resilient, as you put so eloquently, Alastair. Right. We've got some hands in the air. Graham, I think you were first.
Yeah, I got several points. I don't know whether to answer them all at once or let other people come in and I'll come back. But the first one was you were talking about food resilience and the supermarket shelves entering and what could you do about it. And I just wanted to put in a plug for next week's Banter session. There's a local garlic farm on the Isle of Wight, which has recently done 2 things. First of all, they've introduced vastly more worms into their soil, and which is making an enormous difference to their productivity. And the second is that they're switching to market gardening, but they're doing it all on a no-dig philosophy. So for people who want to know what can you do locally to improve your food resilience and your food productivity, next week will be, I think, a wonderful example. The people doing the presentation are very enthusiastic. They're young, so they're going to be doing it for a while. They're just getting started, and it's actually quite fascinating. So moving on from there, the second point I wanted to, one of the points you mentioned was the government insistence on housing, and that what can you do about that? And I would just recommend to people that they take a look at their neighbourhood plans, which have got more clout nowadays under the GHCC. And I suggest that you say that any houses built in our neighbourhood have to meet much higher standards of insulation than the government requires. So it's an extraordinary stupidity of the government at the moment that the insulation regulations that house builders have to build will not meet net zero requirements in 2050. So in other words, every house being built at the moment under current rules will have to be retrofitted in order to meet the requirements of net zero in less than 30 years' time, which is bloody stupid if you ask me. But you can do something about that locally by writing into your neighbourhood plan that houses must be built to sort of passive house type standards. And it does make a big difference. We've got a new development going in our village where every house is going to have a heat pump, every house is going to have solar panels, every house will have a battery, and every house will have high level insulation. And the result of that is that the power they generate will be more than they need. And we're looking at how we're going to send that to the next door development, which is a much older one, which doesn't have any of that stuff. And basically, you're going to reduce people's energy bills and hence their cost of living, all by just raising the standards of the new development. So I suggest that. And finally, in terms of how do we get people to think and not panic? So to Alastair's point, I suggest to people to take a look at the Finns and the Swedes, who require of their civilians to be thinking in a way that makes them part of the national response. And in many ways, this started off with being next door to Russia, of course, and the civilians are expected to take part in military stuff. But the second thing is they've all got handbooks that say you are required to produce at least 3 days' worth of the food and the water and the supplies that you're going to need. And they make simple recommendations, which I, again, commend to everybody, such as don't forget medications. That people have plenty of food and plenty of water, but then they run out of the pills they need to keep them alive. And the second point was don't forget your pets. It's no good having your dog running around starving if you're all right, but he's got nothing to eat because you forgot to pack his dog food. So I just mentioned those in passing. Thank you.
Graham, thanks for that. If you've got English translations of those documents, it'd be good to share them around. And I see, Alastair, you've got a model for a resilience plan as well. It'd be good to perhaps have a copy of that at some point as well. That would be great. Thank you. Jenny Bartlett.
Thanks. And thanks for everything you're doing. It's First time I've managed to get to one of these. Yeah, so double-hatted. I'm here as Transition Leinster, but I'm also Town Councillor on Leinster Town Council. I'm also County Councillor on Herefordshire Council. We did an energy descent action plan, zero carbon Leinster as Transition Leinster in 2019, but of course it all came to a stop with COVID. So this is kind of like a refresh for transition with starting up with this. A lot of what we're wondering at the moment, we're looking to show this in June, and trying to gauge how big a premises we want. So I'm assuming that I'm going to be finding logistical answers on the knowledge base. I mean, how many people are turning up? Is it a workshop type of thing where you've got sitting around tables, having smaller discussions? Yeah, because we got a lot of people to invite.
Yeah, there's sort of two ways of doing it. There's a sort of an open meeting, or there's a targeted meeting with invitation only, and people are doing it those two different ways. What the facilitation guide from the producer says is that if you use one of the booking systems that are available online, and they make some suggestions there, and it's in their facilitation guide, then you get advance notice of who's wanting to come. And I think you can get, there are ones that you can use freely. And so you get that sort of idea. At least you get some idea from advanced bookings. In terms of if there are people, we've mentioned about there are people you particularly want to come, and the producers will say, well, for whoever else you invite, for God's sake, badger your MP to come along.
She's coming.
Oh, she is, that's right. Is this the North Herefordshire Green Party lady?
Yes,
yes, I've met her once. Yeah. That's sound. So there's those two choices. And then again, in terms of having discussions, if it's going to be small tables, yes, that is quite good, because perhaps people discuss more with 3 or 4 people than with 30 or 40 people. But then, of course, you'll need to have facilitators, people that can lay out the plan for it, so that actually support these tables and so forth. The facilitation guide says something about that, and our guidance says yes. Think about that in advance. If you're going to have those discussions, think of having people that that can, not necessarily one for every table, but at least you could be thinking about it. You've got enough people there, and to help manage the whole process. Yeah, I'll put that link to all that guidance we put together in the chat very shortly, so you can share that. And thank you, brilliant. And thank you, Graham. Carry on.
Can I just add one last point? Because obviously, as Leinster Town Council, we declared a climate emergency several years ago. We are one of the places that have just been hit by a massive planning application for 1,600 houses on the edge of town. The only part, because of geography, the only place where you can build. But it is one of the last massive tracts of organic horticultural land. So in terms of food security, it's really bad. It's going to have a massive effect on that as well. But we found when we were doing our neighbourhood plan, Herefordshire Council were very much, you had to be in general conformity with their course strategy. Yeah. So we found that they wouldn't accept any of the higher sustainability levels of building, because they were higher than what Herefordshire Council was saying. They've got to be to the national standards. So if we asked for something higher, we were no longer in conformity with the course strategy. So we found it quite challenging at the parish level. So
I mean, the other thing about that, obviously the local plans and course strategies don't come around that frequently for comment, but when they do, we need to get in there and say, well, what about this, what about that? Certainly as local town and parish councils, we have the opportunity to do that. The more we can do that, the better. There's various bits of advice around about what we can put in there. My other concern is that in terms of the planning inspectorates that review all these plans, including neighbourhood plans, don't always seem to be working from the same hymn sheet either. So I had a chat with a gentleman from the Environment Agency yesterday, and he said, is there any way that they can actually, from their government department, which is DEFRA, have a word with the government department, which is councils and local government, isn't it? MHCLG used to be CLOG, didn't it? To see, they changed that pretty quickly, didn't they? To see what might be done across department. But yeah, I'm making notes here. There's local stuff here. There's planning related stuff here, and then there's national stuff here. And so that there are things obviously need to happen at all of those levels. Great, thanks for that, Jenny. Frank, you've got your hand up.
Thanks. Yes, just a couple of things. On the planning one, I think for me, as important as things like insulation and air source heat pumps and batteries, and they are all superb if we get them in place, the concept of biodiversity in England is net biodiversity again. In Scotland, it's got a slightly different thing as part of NPF4. Right. But at the moment, it actually encourages landowners and developers to despoil and degrade landscape before you submit an application.
Right.
Because you're then in a situation where, oh no, there are no orchids here, there are no bats here. Look, we'll plant a couple of trees afterwards, and that's fine. So I think if local groups and local community councils are going to do things, please include net biodiversity gain, and the fact that the challenge at the moment is it's a farcical concept, that the clock only starts ticking when they put a planning application in, by which stage they could have cut down half the ancient forests in the area. Just a couple of quick ones. We're slightly challenged in Scotland at the moment because we don't have council elections, but we have Holyrood, the Scottish Parliament elections. So it's quite hard to cover some of the stuff without politicising it, because we know perfectly well there are political parties out there that are climate deniers, but at the same time taking them head on would taint this, which is a general population briefing, into being a party political briefing. So we just have to be slightly cautious, I think, in how we engage with it. And the last one is, and this is, I think, very much one that the great collaboration can hopefully add value. I was digging around on the briefing support and what's involved in it and so on, and I see they've tied in with a mob called Antidote so you can do postcode search and see who are doing local activities in your area, and found that apparently we're not in Southwest Stirling. So I've emailed them saying, how do I get myself onto your database? But I know that the good work that you've been doing and Graham's been doing to try and ensure that we're capturing better what's going on across the country. So maybe there's a reach out to Antidote, as they say, who seem to have got the contract with GEB, to say, here's how we can help you, because it definitely is one we want people after briefing to think, do you know what, I'll go online and see what I can get involved with. So that's our good chance. But all really helpful stuff from Andrew, so thanks very much.
Thanks. No, digital mapping is going to be a great way of getting people engaged and to show people what's happening and where the neighbourhood.
Well, I'd say that when you're on the emergency briefing site, it says key in your postcode, and you do, and then it goes away and comes back with a couple of suggestions. But ours aren't even in the right county. They're in Eastern Bartonshire, which may be the nearest that it's been able to find. But obviously we probably have to raise our profile. But I think there's a piece of work that great collaboration might be able to do to help organisations do that.
Great. Many thanks for that. Yeah, one of the issues about biodiversity gain in England is that the powers that be can backdate the review. Actually, people can't just say, oh, sorry, Gov, there's nothing there. You can't have 10% extra of it. They can backdate it to about, I think it's January 2021 or something. So that at least in England, they've covered that particular point. I haven't got any feedback as to how successful that's being, but at least the government did think about that in terms of English drivers. Okay. Many thanks for that chance, Frank. Graham, you've got another thought?
Just another couple of thoughts. So on the biodiversity net gain, it's well worthwhile councils paying for an audit now to establish a baseline, particularly if you think that there's going to be development coming at some point. So I suggest that. The other thing I have is a couple of hints for people who are planning sessions, and particularly using these ticketing systems. So there's no charge for the tickets. People just click and sign their name out. I would suggest that you put the ticketing link when you've gone to Ticket Tailor, and it'll give you a link, then you can put that on the map of the NEB briefing map. You can put the ticket link there, so anybody who looks at what you're up to will be invited to buy a ticket for nothing. The second thing is that we found that it was very underwhelming. So we got about 15 people taking tickets, and we had a sellout stand-up crowd of 40 on the first session. We catered for 25. And then we found that we had to run a second session to catch the next lot. So we just, we had the first session, we had a discussion that the NEB providers suggest be at least 10 minutes. We stopped 90 minutes later and went straight into the second session and got another batch. So I do recommend the ticketing system to you, but then allow quite a lot for those who haven't bothered to put it in. And again, if you can arrange for your location to show multiple times, then obviously that can help. And even if you can put multiple choices on the ticketing system, say, are you booking for the 10 o'clock screening or the noon screening or whatever, that helps you. So I just think that's helpful.
That's from hard practice. Great, thanks for that. David.
Yes, and following on from Graham's comments, we're planning on having a community screening of the film 17th of June, and I was really interested in getting advice from those who have organised screenings so far about the best format, whether or not to try and wheel in some experts for a panel discussion, Q&A, or whether to leave it up to those that attend to sort of generate their own discussions. What's your feedback?
Graham, did you have any experts there?
So yeah, what we did, David, was to pre-book a hall for a follow-up session. So we were able to tell everybody we're going to have a follow-up from this meeting where we want you to come and bring your ideas, and it's there that we will actually decide what people are going to do. And if you've been paying any attention to any of the Community Climate Action Plan sessions, their workshops are 100% based around volunteering. So these meetings, if you can, you sort of tell people what the options are going to be in your area, and you want to put them under the main topic headings, you know, food, energy, transport, all the rest of it. And then you say, why don't all those people who want to talk about food get around this table, all those about transport around that, and they sit around and they hash out ideas. And there's a lot of use of post-it notes, where all the post-it notes are put together on larger pieces of paper, and then you bring all the pieces of paper together, and then you do some analysis and you work out how people are going to do it, and then you invite the people who put those post-it notes in to say, so how are you going to start this? And get them to do the work. And that seems to work so much better than saying, here's a climate action plan, we need to do this, this, and this, who wants to do it? And what you need to do is persuade people that they've created their own agenda, they've created their own sessions, and off they go. And that's what we had all planned for the follow-up session. And we planned the follow-up session for 6 weeks after the main showing. And then, of course, you have to think very carefully about school holidays and bank holidays and whether Arsenal is playing Fulham for the club on that particular day. But basically, yes. And also, I've meant to say when I was talking about ticketing, that the NEB provides you with posters, digital posters and printable posters that you can put out around the village to make sure people are aware. And again, I strongly suggest that you get yourselves a QR code for your ticketing system, or at least put the ticketing system URL on those posters, so that people who are now getting used to using their mobile phones can just point at the QR code and off they go and get their tickets booked right then and there. And people who are sitting at their desktop computers can just click on the URL and go that way. It is all information helping you to organize it. But you're absolutely right that you do get a lot of discussion. This film is wonderful at getting people involved. We had our local MP stand present, and then basically the whole point of getting the MP involved is to make sure he conveys to Parliament the volume of energy and noise being made about what people want to see their government doing. And basically the general opinion is that the government isn't doing anything like us. The people who made the film are recognizing that there's a national emergency, but the government hasn't. So we need to get the word across. And instantly we asked our MP what he thought, and he thought that government was pretty much on side and knew all about it. And our MP is a Conservative, and the next day the Conservatives came out with what we're going to do when we get back in power. And item number 2 was we're going to reduce our spending on net zero, which, of course, once you've seen this film, you'll see that The Economist makes the point very strongly that the more you delay spending on net zero, the more expensive it is. And the more you put the money into it now, the cheaper the cost of living for all your inhabitants, because, of course, if you're doing your own energy and you're doing your own food production, then you're reducing people's costs. So there are lots of pluses coming out of this. And I think just we found the best way of coping was to say, do please discuss this now, bring us your main points of concern, but most of all, convince your MP to do something about it. And then we're going to have a follow-up session, which is booked for such and such a date, and you're all invited. And particular note, which was mentioned in Andrew's presentation, is make sure you capture people's names and email addresses so you can get back in touch with them. That was crucial. We had a clipboard which we passed around, and it started on minute 1, and it hadn't finished by the end of the 90-minute session. People were taking a lot of time to make comments and say what they thought, and I actually asked them to say if they were going to come to the follow-up session. And there were mostly yeses, that people said, unfortunately, we'll be on our cruise. So, at least you know who's got the money around here. Right, I'm done, sorry.
Another person that might come, if you've got a couple of, standout local projects, people might actually like to talk about them. You mentioned experts, David. If there are people actually doing stuff locally, say, "Oh, we're doing it," and that might be a usefully encouraging thing as well.
Do involve farmers. Whatever you do on the follow-up session, make sure you've got the local landowners and the farmers there, because you will be discussing who's going to be producing organic foods, who's doing regenerative farming, who's got masses of cows which are generating all the methane that we don't need, and so forth. And again, for those of you who've not yet seen it, one of the items in the how do we resolve this issue in the film is stop eating meat. So you're going to have the local farmers there, because they're going to have to get involved in one way or the other. So if you've got people around you who are already working on climate change in some form or another, then try to certainly give them the invitation to come to the follow-up session, because they should be involved. We're trying to get everyone working together.
Thank you, Alastair. I think this is up your road as well. But you have your hand up.
I was going to deal with that second while I was settled down. What was the name of the film?
People's Emergency Briefing. Yeah.
Sorry?
People's Emergency Briefing. Yeah. I put the link in the chat, which tells you more about it, as well as our advice and guidance on how to manage.
Thank you. And as for beef and sheep farmer, I'm enamoured by Graham's comments, and I think that when he's finished eating his fungus with all the additives that God knows what's in it to make it so it's supposed to come up to spar, you'll be coming back to beef soon enough. But it's interesting times, especially at the moment. We've got no grass and no rain, and we're looking at having to reduce the herding as it is. So you want something with a couple of hundred cattle, then you're welcome.
No, we need your sheep, Alastair, to build all the wooden clothes we need to cope with the minus 30 degrees centigrade temperatures that they're promising us in the winter.
Well, if it comforts you, all our wool goes in a heap and it's just rotted away, because it's not worth selling.
Really?
It wouldn't come to the cost of shearing.
Really? Ouch.
Really?
So, yeah, you've got no idea what goes on. Nobody has.
No, of course not. No.
When the Russians had their big army, it was quite helpful, because a lot of our wool went to make greatcoats for the Russians. But anyway, we move on.
Well, that's right. I mean, again, not my field, Alastair, and certainly I've only seen pictures of people spinning wool into yarn.
Yeah.
The sheep that the fleeces you're talking about are then just not usable at all, even by somebody given them to work on.
We give it to some of the people who want it, but the quantity they don't. There's just impossible for local people to take.
Right. Okay.
It's a complete and utter scandal, but there we are.
Right. Okay. Talk about farmers generally, because I'm not in that world you are. What is there? Presumably, there's lots of debates going on in farming communities about all this good advice that's coming out from green parties and other places. I have been to an event where there was a farmer who was beginning to go more down the line of sort of a plant-based farming and so forth. What's your perception of the spread of views amongst farmers about all of this? I mean,
I was at a meeting last night with a regenerative farmer, and he was doing all these things, and his whole policy worked because he had the single farm, or the SFI, the single farm incentive payments, the government £250 a hectare, because he qualified for 5 or 6 different headings. But if he hadn't got that, he would be down with the rest of us.
Right. Okay. And those payments come from
they're the payments that were supposed to be replacing what the EEC were paying, and the government's cut them short of when they should have been cut. And now they have certain policies which they want us to incentivise to. One of the things, we had to put £30,000 building up to store the dung from the buildings in the wintertime, so it didn't go out in the field and pollute. Well, that takes a fair amount of profit to pay that sort of thing. And it's these policies which people come into, and they don't realise the consequence of it. But yeah,
is there the things that we're talking about the costs of farming, the issues around farming? Has somebody produced any kind of summary of that for those of us that are not in the farming community to understand?
I think the NFU and the like have got all these charts and everything together. But okay. I'm not political. I hope I'm not too political anyway. But that's how we live at the moment.
Yeah, because
it's just, for example, our red diesel has gone up by double or slightly more than double from what we were buying it about a month ago. And we're not worried now about whether we can get hold of it. So we're looking at putting a second tank in so that we've got something to work with later in the year if we run short.
Right. Okay. And is that the war around having that effect? Is that the thing?
Yeah. It's totally by that. Totally by that.
I don't know if Trump's still wanting to get the Nobel Peace Prize. I would like to think that by having started the war, he excluded himself.
I think it's better if they gave him it, so he might stop doing what he's doing.
Well, sometimes I think he wakes up in the morning and thinks, "Oh, what am I going to change my mind about today?" Anyway, yes, I thank you for that, Alastair, for all of that. And I've been thinking about getting in touch with the NFU, and I should do that more sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Because if there are people, it's easy to talk in platitudes about farming if we don't know anything about it. Okay. Thank you for that. So if we've got a couple of options. It's just coming up to 1 o'clock. If we've got any more points we want to discuss, and things in terms of outreach, in terms of digital mapping has been suggested, in terms of you mentioned farmers, Graham, ways in which of getting more people engaged, certainly a resilience plan and having more options presented to town and parish councils. So those are the ideas that I've made a note of